Welcome to the Means of Grace podcast from the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church. I'm Reverend Joel Enniss, and today we're going to talk about something that lives right at the intersection of faith and action, law and conscience, prayer and protest, civil disobedience or civil resistance. On June 30th, 2025, in Washington, D.C., clergy, advocates, and everyday Americans gathered in prayerful protest under the banner of Moral Monday, confronting Congress and the administration over a proposed federal budget that threatens deep cuts to lifelines such as SNAP and Medicaid. Organized by Repairers of the Breach and clergy led by the Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II, the rally marked a powerful moment of moral witness. 6 of our very own United Methodists, 5 clergy and 1 lay member, were present and were arrested by Capitol Police. At the same time, senators prepared to vote on the one big beautiful bill that the President of the United States signed on July 4th, 2025. But we will focus on them and all of that stuff I just mentioned in a moment. Neither civil disobedience or civil resistance may sound like religious phrases at first. It's more likely to evoke thoughts of picket signs, arrests, or fiery speeches on courthouse steps. But civil disobedience is, at its core, about choosing to follow a higher law. God's law of justice and of love, even when it means standing against the margins of civil obedience. Today on the show, I'm joined as always by my co-host, Reverend John Yeager. John, how you doing today, man?
Oh, I am doing great, Jesse. As always, I am doing well because the Florida Gators are still national champions of the basketball world.
Oh, man, and he will not let us forget that. Together, we'll look at civil disobedience from a historical and theological perspective. We'll reflect on the American story of resistance and the crucial role clergy have played in that resistance, and share with it means to disobey with grace and conviction. We're also joined by a special guest, Reverend Joel Simpson, clergy member of the Western North Carolina Conference, who has played a leading role in recent protest efforts, including the Moral Monday movement, on June 30th. John,
Yes,
let's lay the groundwork here. When we talk about civil disobedience, what are some of the earliest examples in the biblical narrative?
Love it, Jesse. Yeah, we are taking a turn now, and we are casting our gaze wider to the nation and to the decisions that have to be made. And it's not the first time. The Bible is filled with what we might call holy resistance. Hebrew midwives in Exodus disobeyed Pharaoh's genocidal commands. Daniel continued to pray to his God even when the law said not to. Esther spoke up to the king, risking her life. These aren't just moral footnotes. They are acts of deliberate disobedience to unjust laws undertaken in service of a higher truth, a higher calling. And of course, we come to Jesus. His actions were profoundly disruptive to the religious and political order. He healed on the Sabbath. He turned over the tables. He refused to condemn the woman accused of adultery. Jesus wasn't executed because he kept quiet when things were wrong. He was crucified because he threatened the order of things. The law was his judge and order was his executioner. The gospel doesn't coddle power, it critiques it. And throughout church history, faithful people have followed that path. Early Christians were martyred for refusing to worship Caesar. Reformers challenged the corruptions in the church. Clergy hid Jews from Nazis. Resistance is our inheritance. It's a burden we must once again acknowledge and take with joy in our hearts. You know, that the early Christian church, civil disobedience was everything. In fact, just existing was civil disobedience. It's not something you hear in Sunday school very often. They were underground, literally underground. Their worship was illegal. Their scriptures were banned. Their people were executed, but they kept meeting and they kept pushing and pushing. So that's how we have it. What do you think, Jesse? Is civil resistance, is going against the law and order of our community in a higher calling, is that what we're called to do? And I ask you that very tentatively, Jesse, because unlike Joel and I, you have not written your papers yet.
Oh, I'm looking forward to the Board of Order Ministry calling me on things that I've said in this podcast. But here's the thing. I do believe that we are called to live into the image and the likeness, most importantly, of God. And when God came in the flesh, to your point, John, he was not quiet. He was not everything that the civilians hoped that he would be. He was an agitator in a lot of different senses, because the world that Jesus inhabited, the world that we inhabit, is a broken world. It's a world that we need to be able to shine a light on the darkness and the brokenness, so that we can mend those things, and so that we can heal. And so one of the things that I like to say as a 9 on the Enneagram, if you know anything about the Enneagram, the 9s are the peacemakers. One of the things that I like to say is that we are not called to be peacekeepers, but peacemakers. And sometimes making peace comes on the other side of a little bit of chaos. Sometimes you have to
good trouble.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get into good trouble. Sometimes you have to address a lot of the dysfunctions of the world. You can't just turn a blind eye to it. You can't just roll over or sweep it under the rug. It takes a lot of hard work, to your point, to be someone who is seeking peace, a pacifist. And so we've got a lot of work to do. Yeah, exactly. We look to our leaders to represent. We as clergy look to Christ to show us the way. I think we as Christians look to Christ to show us the way, but we as clergy in particular, as ones who are following in Christ's footsteps, to be a part of that priestly order, to share that image and share that likeness with the world, so that they might never forget it, so that Christ is ever before God's people. And so, we have a lot of work to do.
I was asked in my Board of Ordained Ministry interview what being set apart meant. And I had a terrible answer. I have since been ordained, but I had a terrible answer. But I've come around to the understanding of, I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it, because they're separate in those moments. And I saw it, but I want to talk about me. I want to talk about Joel Simpson.
Yeah, let's talk about Joel Simpson.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joel Simpson is an extraordinary individual that I followed rather blindly, willingly, joyfully. Let me tell you, and I'd say follow blindly, and I don't mean that in a negative term, meaning I heard and felt his call to do this, and he asked, and Joel will tell you, shockingly, my answer was, okay. He didn't even know what quite to do with it. He was like, well, I've asked actually 70 other people that. But it didn't take anything for me to follow him. Joel, introduce yourself. Guy. Tell us who you are, other than my clergy colleague, my friend, my fellow Candler School of Theology graduate. Thank you, Emory. Joel, tell us about yourself, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, John. Glad to be friends with both of you guys and on here. So my name is Joel Simpson. I'm the pastor at First United Methodist Church in Taylorsville, North Carolina. So it's a small congregation. Well, maybe not small. Used to be identified as small. Maybe now, in our new context, is labeled medium size. And I've been there. This is April was the starting of my 8th year. So we've been hanging out there together.
Congratulations. And they love you there.
Yeah,
they really do.
Yeah, it's a great community of people. Absolutely.
So where are some places you have served in the past, Joel? And then what got you into the concept of believing that civil disobedience, that standing up in kind of the margins of where there's law and order, where there's oppressed, where there's the haves, the have-nots is standing in there, or standing in the breach, if you will. What pulled you there, and ultimately then to D.C. A few weeks ago, when the first time that you went?
Yeah. Well, I went to Candler. For
Yeah, you did.
And yep, which I think we mentioned, yeah. And there was a moment there, an important moment I think I go back to for my ministry, which is me and two friends were walking through this place called Little Five Points in Atlanta. And this guy came up and he asked if we had any money, if we could buy him some food, something like that. And somehow each of us came up with an excuse. And then I went to preaching class and I was preaching on the story of the Good Samaritan.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. In this story, there's three people that all like pass this guy. And what?
Oh, no.
So it just hit me in this moment, like, oh, preaching is for everyone else. It's also for me. And who do I want to be in my faith tradition? Who do I want to be if I'm going to end up being a pastor? Who do I want to be? So it was a defining moment of, oh, okay, this matters. If I'm going to follow Jesus, I'm going to follow Jesus as well as I can. It doesn't mean I do it perfectly, but that just became a touchstone for me in my life and my ministry that I go back to over and over and over again. And so I've tried to carry that. After being in Atlanta, I moved back to Charlotte and did some stuff before doing pastoral ministry. And my first appointment was in Cornelius at Mount Zion. I was an associate pastor there, which was a great gift to be in the setting of a large church with multiple clergy and staff and people to help guide me and give me insight and wisdom. And yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then from there, I went to Taylorsville.
And what then led you to from Taylorsville to a couple months ago, when you went up to DC and were arrested the first time?
Well, it's a great community of people. We connect a lot with our local soup kitchen, which is in our previous church building. And so we have a ministry there, and we have a lot of nonprofit organizations that are in that building. So we navigate a lot of people who are in the margins and people who fall into this breach that needs to be repaired. And on Good Friday this year, we had a prayer walk. We went through our community and we stopped at different organizations and buildings. And kind of the tagline we talked about was Jesus was condemned to death by systems of power. And so who's being condemned to death by systems of power in our communities? And how does resurrection and new life operate in our communities, just like they operated in Jesus's life? So as we went to each place, we looked at the good that the organization does, how they try and repair the breach, and then also talked about how this budget that was being proposed at the time would impact the ministry and the work and this resurrection and new life that these organizations were trying to lead in. So the more we learned about our community, the more people were like, oh, whoa, this is going to affect a lot of people. 28% of our county is on Medicaid, 14% are on SNAP benefits. We've got a few nursing homes, but no hospital. So a lot of these nursing homes depend on Medicaid. Our hospital closed well over a decade ago. Might have been saved if the Affordable Care Act had been around in time to add some more funding to that hospital. Yeah. So we're seeing some of the same ripple effects in other rural communities with this budget, the same kind of concerns. And so as the church noted that, I was like, oh, this is very personal. It's not a budget that's way up here in the sky about theoretical people. It lands in our local context about people we know who are in nursing homes and people we know who are on Medicaid and people we know who are on SNAP benefits. So that compelled me to go to DC, and I put a call out to the congregation, just said, would anyone like to come? And a church member came with me. And side note on this is that no one has ever come just by a blanket invitation. People have only come because I've personally invited them. And there's actually, like, if you dive into the research, people don't even join resistant movements just because. They join because someone invites them. People don't do what we think are the right and good and moral things just on their own, but because there's like people inviting them into this larger story. And so
Wow.
I've
Yeah.
definitely seen that to be true. So I invited this church member up. We went, we prayed, we were there together in the Capitol Rotunda. And in that process, I was arrested and came back, and the congregation knew, like, oh, all of these things affect us. And so it wasn't why did you get arrested, or why did this happen? There were those questions, more like the policy end of it, right?
Right.
Like, why would the Capitol Police arrest you? What was going on? But not the question of why did you go up there? We know the importance of what's happening. And so then we went back the next month, and 7 people, we went together. Again, people I personally invited, right?
I know. I was tooting my own horn there earlier, and Joel brought me back down to earth. For all of you still listening, it's like, I said yes. But man, he was right, though. It took a personal, it did. That face and that to see it in his eyes, I was like, I'll follow him. But you're right. The blanket invitation wasn't it.
Absolutely, yeah. And so then on June 30th, 35 of us went. We rented a charter bus, and we left from Taylorsville at 1 a.m. and rode up. And I think for that trip, I think I invited probably over 200 people. And there was no one who was like, I don't want to be a part of this. There were just people saying, I can't not work. I've got to work, or I've got obligations, or even if I do this, this could jeopardize my job. I could face some serious consequences just for going. And so there's a lot of fear in the atmosphere of where are our faces and our bodies showing up, and where are they not showing up, and what's wise for people to do and not wise for people to do. And none of that's a judgment. All of that is people paying attention to their needs and what's important.
Yeah, I think so. So I did go with you to DC this past time. And I'm
glad you did. Thanks for coming.
I'm with you, Joel, man. I wasn't before, but then I saw it in your eyes. You're right. And I knew it. I knew it was real. So I'd follow that anywhere for this type of justice work. You're going to be my first phone call from now on. But we were there, and for a variety of reasons we might get to later, our stay was extended. And we got to see some prep for the 4th of July. And I couldn't help but feel so strange, I guess, just where we were trying to pay the things after getting arrested and things, and then looking at the celebration of one of the more illegal acts in the history of the world. Boston Tea Party, tax resistance, pamphlet flyers, straight up rebellion. But it never stopped for America. Abolitionists, Sojourner, and Sojourner Truth, who fused Christian faith and a demand for justice. Henry David Thoreau gave us the term civil disobedience. So there have been these leaders over the centuries of this nation who have felt that being a patriot and being having conviction in your faith, and you don't have to let one slide because of the other. I don't want to say you have to marry the two, but you don't let one slide because of the other, particularly then which one you put on top of the other. I think that Bishop Daniel Payne, one of our first African-American bishops in the Methodist tradition, worked for abolition and education. They fused these things together, and it gave them a strength. I think it can be unapologetically theological and spiritual. To stand in those margins or to stand in the breach, Joel. So I want to give you a chance, Joel, though, to talk about Reverend Dr. Barber. So I got to see him up close for the first time. He is a force of nature. I hope I'm him when I grow up. Golly. Talk a little bit about him and what you've gleaned from him, being closer now.
Well, I've been to a lot of events with Reverend Barber, just over the years. And that's one thing, is just kind of showing up and being a part is how you get plugged in, right? It's not that's always been the case for me. One of the first times I showed up to a Repairs of the Breach event was what we call Freedom Fridays, which was in Raleigh. And there was someone who had been in prison for 26 years and was innocent the entire time. And he had gotten out. He'd been out for 2 years, had been freed, but never exonerated. So that means he still had a criminal record, and he couldn't, if you were going to like try and get a house or something, that was on his record. If you were going to try and get a loan or something, that was on his record. And in addition to that, you get paid for every year you're in prison and you're innocent. And so for some reason, North Carolina had not signed this document that gave him 26 years worth of pay for being falsely imprisoned. And Governor Cooper was the governor at the time. So part of what the kind of mantra and phrasing that we try and say over and over and over again is that this isn't left versus right, it's right versus wrong. Meaning you find me in front of Governor Cooper's house, okay. Yep. You can also find me in front of a Republican senator's house or the president, whether they're Democrat or Republican.
That's right.
This is our Christian heritage, right? And our prophetic witness is that it's not partisan, it's justice oriented.
And I agree with you. Too oftentimes it feels like the clergy for one political group come out for one thing, and the clergy for the other political group come out for other things. And it would be refreshing, I think, for the majority of Americans to see some clergy that came out all the time, because there's always a need to resist the human, just the natural inclination that government, that power that humans, put on other people.
Yeah. So that was one of my first interactions with Reverend Barber. And then having been involved in the Poor People's Campaign and involved in repairs of the breach stuff. So to see him do his work and how he is like very direct in that we're building a disciplined movement, right? So there's clear direction, there's clear structure, there's clear, like, you can't do this. This is not allowed. But then he's also very pastoral. So, for example, when we're up in DC, people are talking in the crowd. He's like, look, we're here to listen to people's stories. This isn't social hour. And while he's telling people that, he's also wetting a towel and putting it on the back of people's necks because it's sweltering hot out there. And so the speaker's there, he's making sure they're cool and they're paid attention to and cared for. And so he's carrying both of these roles of prophet and priest.
Yeah, and it's so much to aspire to. But and I hear people say, I don't know if I could be him. He's not. Well, try. It's fun. If you're going to idolize him, don't just stop at that, right? I idolized Joel and I went anyway. You don't just stop there. I mean, engage, I think is what you're saying, right? Don't just read about Reverend Barber. Go try to stand next to him.
Yeah, and so Joel, the last time you and I was host, you were guest on the Means of Grace podcast. We were having conversations about we kind of fell into a conversation about how you would go to DC and you were expecting that at some point you were going to be arrested. And I remember Kim Ingram and I, and we recently reposted that episode, but I remember Kim Ingram and I just kind of being a little bit, just kind of blown away by your willingness to to go that far. And I'm really encouraged, especially that John had an opportunity to participate in that. I know folks might be thinking, Jesse's clergy too. Why don't you ask Jesse? Let the record show that Joel did ask me. Joel did ask me, but for family obligations, I wasn't able to go. I wanted to ask you, as a clergy person, to engage in something that most people would rather not, that a lot of clergy would rather not. What does that mean for you? Or what does that mean to you?
One, what does it mean to you to actually do it? Maybe to kind of give some people that are like, I don't know, what would it mean? Does it mean a lot? And then the second part for Jesse is, what does it mean to you that Jesse said no? No, I'm just kidding. No. Totally kidding.
Yeah, I think, I want to be clear. I don't think that's work for everybody.
No.
That there is risk involved, and there are limitations involved, and there are important reasons people shouldn't engage in that kind of work and ministry and witness. So that makes it personal already, right? That everyone has to decide for themselves. Is this something I could or should or feel called to engage in. For me, it was very much a call to engage in. It wasn't, there are very few moments I've felt the Spirit move and lead me in a direction like I did May 5th when I was arrested in the Capitol Rotunda. Things lined up in such a way that there could have been no other answer to be there and praying. And so for me, that was absolutely a call. And I don't know that we think of it like a call, but to be a prophet is a call, just like to be a pastor is a call, just like to be a teacher is a call, right? We're called in many different ways. And so I put this in that same kind of category, that not everyone is called into that role. So that makes it personal. We actually had a guy show up the Sunday I was leaving on May 4th, and he had been hitchhiking from California and made it all the way to Taylorsville, North Carolina, and walked in worship in time for communion at the end of the service. And at the end, the very end, I invited people to come have a conversation if they wanted to go to DC. And he showed up and we talked about going to DC. And he's like, "You're going to protest? Like, I don't know if I agree with this." And so we kind of talked through like, well, what is a prophetic witness? And I brought him to lunch and dropped him off somewhere. And it was very beautiful because at the end we prayed for each other, right? Him and what his journey, and me for going to DC. I just thought, wow, you couldn't have lined that up, right? So it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. And for him, it's not a call, right? For him, it's absolutely insane. And I kind of agree that it's insane, but I also agree calls are often insane.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So what encouragement would you offer to clergy or lay folks who feel that call, who feel that pull towards activism, but for whatever reason, either it's, just something that they believe growing up, or, one of the things about our calls, especially in ministry, is that it's really important for that call to be not just a call that you hear from God, but a call that folks in your community as well affirm. But what if folks aren't getting that, hearing that call be affirmed? Like, what would you say to folks who, for whatever reason, feel like they're hesitant?
Yeah. I would find someone to talk to, right? We have mentors that we listen to and kind of lead us and guide us in some kinds of ways, whether we call them spiritual directors or mentors or pastors or friends. And also that I think the call to this kind of work can look like a bunch of different things. Meaning, I think Jesus actively engaged in this kind of work, organizing work, right? We think of his ride in on Palm Sunday to Jerusalem, and people think the donkey just, right, go get this donkey. No. Jesus organized, right? He planned that out.
There was some planning.
Yeah. There's some planning involved. Like, we're going to be doing this thing, guys, and this is where I need you to be, and this is how I need you to help, and this is, right? So Jesus is an organizer. Jesus is engaging in this kind of work and ministry too. Yeah. And so there's all kinds of levels and ways to engage, whether you want to help fund, whether you want to show up, whether you want to help organize, whether you want to make phone calls, whether you want to. And so I think it's both listening to your call, but also finding how do you ease into it, right? Even for pastoral work, it's an incremental thing, right? First you feel the call, you try some things out, you get your feet wet. Maybe you go to seminary, you learn from other people, right? We build people into it. It's not jump into the deep end, first go.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Joel, can you mention a little, so being our fearless leader, there were a handful of other clergy.
You got to downplay some of this. You got
to. Poor Joel. Listen. At some point, I imagine Barber and others were like, "Listen, guys, you got to downplay this. I'm not the guy yet. I'm not there yet." But at some point, I'm telling you, Joel, at some point, somebody said it to him, and it didn't sound weird. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say to you, Joel. There's going to come a day, I think, where you're going to hear that, and it's not going to ring bad in your ear, and you're going to go, "Huh."
I don't think so. But
I don't think so. But anyway, but you had a flock. I reached out to the others. Tell us about those who said yes. The other clergy that said, "You know what? I'll come with you, excluding me. You don't need to talk about me.
Yeah. So yeah, we had quite a few clergy who came along from different areas, and not all were up for carrying coffins into the street. Right? We haven't even talked about what we did on the 30th.
We'll get there.
Which was I called and invited people, and this is a learning process for me too, right? In that when people, where are people? I don't know how people have engaged in this kind of work or not. How do people feel about it theologically? I had some conversations with laity at conference who were like, I don't think I agree with this, but I think I could be persuaded. And I was like, well, I don't know if it's my job to persuade you. I think you be faithful to what you feel, and if you want to have some conversation, I'm happy to. And so same for clergy, right? People recognize this as important work, that this big bad budget, we haven't been calling it a beautiful one, we've been calling it this big deadly bill that
law now, I guess.
And that it's harmful, right? So people everyone's thinking more like, all the ways we can engage in this is important, whether through teaching, through preaching, through going. And so, the clergy I invited who were able to come, because I invited a lot who wanted to come, but just couldn't make it for various reasons, like Jesse, right? And so, they were willing to come and be a part of the experience, and some were more comfortable being in different roles. So,
who were those?
Fun.
That's what I want to know. I asked them if you could shout them out, and they said yes.
Oh, now you're going to put my memory to the test. Because I don't have everyone right in front of me. So help me out here, John.
In the car, there was, I was going to keep calling him Ben. We had Bert, our resident Baptist. Let's see, who was in the car, Joel?
Karen Roberts came.
Karen Roberts.
Who's clergy. Carolee Potter.
Daryl
Dason.
Daryl Dason, you came too. Shout out Charlotte, West Side.
Yep. So we had a good crew. John.
Yeah.
And one of my church members, Chris Strathy, who prayed in the rotunda while we were outside.
That's right. We had a good group. And so it was fun. I want to talk a little bit, just real quick, about what happened. So that people know at least why we went, and what failure looks like. And I'm going to use that word, and I'm not going to hide from it, because we're afraid of failure. We're like, why should we do something if we're going to quote unquote fail? Well, let me tell you, the difference between failing in the darkness where nobody can see and failing out trying something where everybody can see you is different. If you want to call some of the things Jesus did a quote unquote failure just because it didn't work out the way that some people might have thought it, that's not the point. So when we say that it is a bill now, it's a law. And I've heard people, I don't know if you have, Joel, going, well, it didn't make a difference. And I just go, oh, you don't know you don't know why we were there. I think you're misunderstanding this. So, Joel, I'll jump in, but talk to us about the moment of getting. So we get on our bus, we get to DC, we are there to protest, and go from there, because you had a little bit of a higher perspective than me, just as far as knowing the routine a little bit more. We arrive, people are making coffins, people are, other groups have orange bands, other groups have green bands, this conversation's going on, that conversation is going on. I imagine it was less chaotic from your vantage point, having been there a few times. So talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, and I also want to go back to a comment you made before about not being successful, and just add, like, when were the prophets ever successful? And what
there you go. There you go.
Except Jonah, who didn't even want to do what he had to do.
Desperately wanted to fail.
Yeah, right. He was upset. Right. Prophetic work. I think we have to look at success a little differently when it comes to this kind of stuff, and to say what is success, and is it actually changing the policies? That would be one way of looking at success, and I wish that had happened, right? And another way of looking at success is, are we being faithful, and are we being clear that we are witnesses to this injustice and this harm that's happening, and we're not letting it happen silently. And we're not going to let people kill us without speaking about it. And we're not going to, right? So there's a different kind of witness. Are we giving voice to people so that they can share their stories, right? Success looks very different. Are we empowering people? So to that effect, like this gathering was very intentionally a people's forum. So we brought people from around the country to come share their stories about how this budget would impact them. And we brought 2 people on our bus who were going to share. We brought others who were going to share with the news. And in all of the chaos, I didn't get an opportunity to. But yeah, we showed up at a church right near the Supreme Court, and we gathered there and got a briefing, essentially. So this is what the budget says, right? Because we always want to be, as Reverend Barber says, if you're going to be loud, you got to be right. You don't want to be loud and wrong.
I love that when he said
yes. So let's get clear. These are the issues. This is who it will impact. This is the harm that will happen. And then this is what we're going to do. So we're going to leave from here, and we're going to follow these steps. And in the midst of that process, different people doing different stuff are briefed in different ways. So if you're going to be carrying a coffin, so this is one of the things we're going to do. We carried coffins, 51 coffins, to represent the 51,000 people that health experts have said will die if this budget passes for next year. There'll be 40.
It also worked out that we have about 50 states.
Yeah. So there'll be 40 plus thousand that die
plus
every
the
year.
DC. That was right there.
Mm-hmm. So we had the 51, and each coffin represented one state. And on that coffin would have the people who would lose Medicaid, the people that lose SNAP benefits. So those who were going to be carrying the coffins had a different kind of briefing than those who might be speaking, had a different kind of briefing than those who are going to be marshals who will put on vests and assist the crowd as we march and make sure people are safe. If people have questions, they also take signs away if there's signs that we don't want there, right? We're disciplined, right? We're stuff that says stuff that isn't true, that is hateful, that is
don't be loud and wrong.
Yeah. So we followed that process and that work until it was time to leave. And then as we left, John, you can share a little bit how we marched out if you want.
Yeah, I was carrying a coffin with another individual, and we marched. And what was, I think, interesting to me was, again, this is success and fail. It didn't go smoothly. You didn't maybe see it didn't go smoothly. There was yelling, there was arguing, there was confusion, but there wasn't a lack of passion, and we all knew that we were going forward together. So we were patient. We organized it, we reorganized it, we reorganized it again. Right? We just kept pivoting. And I found that to be one of the more interesting parts of being a part of it is you can go in with a plan, but the real plan is we're going to go protest this specific reason. We're going to be heard. We're going to end up here. We all know what we're doing. And that was cool. Knowing that it didn't work yet, it didn't go smoothly. And yet I would never say that it didn't go the way that everybody was hoping it would still.
Yeah. And I think, just to add some more layers to this is that we've got a whole legal team that is coordinating this. So they're letting us know what is allowed, what isn't allowed, what consequences will be if, for example, if you're on the Supreme Court steps, you're not allowed to be on the Supreme Court steps. You will get arrested for that. Do not stand on the Supreme Court steps. No. Things like very important details like that.
Yes.
We've got a team of people who are setting up sound and leading music and coordinating speakers. So when we get to the Supreme Court with the coffins, there's a sound system set up, and we can begin. And Reverend Barber will set the tone for theologically what's going on and what we're doing there. And then a policy expert comes and shares, these are the harmful things in this bill that we care about that are impacting poor and low-income people and our communities. And then we had testimonies. So one of the guys from our community, Chris Shoemake, just finished high school, and he shared about how he grew up on SNAP benefits, how he grew up on Medicaid, how those things were essential to him getting through school, how he had a big health crisis and was in the hospital last year, and Medicaid paid for that, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now he's going to college, to a community college, and he's still going to end up depending on SNAP benefits and Medicaid as he tries to go to school. And he said, I need this so I can focus. If I have to worry about what I'm going to eat, how am I ever going to get through school? And then our own Karen Roberts, who's one of our clergy in Wilkesboro, she shared about her father being in Spruce Pine. So Karen grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, and he depends on a local hospital there, which could end up being closed because of this budget. And so even though there's caveats, right? They've put in some billions of dollars to try and help that, but it doesn't go through the whole 10 years of the budget. So it's kind of like a pretend fix, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And if this hospital closes for her dad, he'll have to go over about an hour to the nearest hospital. So as he's aging and getting older and in need, that's a big concern for her, big concern for him, big concern for their community. So we heard these stories and these testimonies. A pastor came from California and shared about how someone was arrested and detained and taken by ICE in her church parking lot, and the trauma of that and the harm of that, and that this budget is going to cut.
Will cut support for people who need it, like SNAP and Medicaid, and it's going to increase the military budget and increase funding for ICE.
Some people might look at this and say, well, what'd you do all this for? John brought that up earlier, even though, because the bill still passed. Earlier today, I was reading the Duke Clergy Health Initiative that they had assessed and worked to improve. They continue to assess and work to improve the health and well-being of United Methodist clergy. And as United Methodist clergy, I like the sound of that, right? So, I was kind of reading the report and the resource that they provided. And one of the things that they said in that resource was that pastors work in alignment with God, who has been at work in our ministry settings long before we arrived and will still be at work long after we are gone. And so it says that the clergy members that flourish, they focus on the process and work in alignment with God instead of focusing on the outcome. And it sounds to me like that's the type of work that this requires, is focusing on the process, having trust that God is in control, that God has an ultimate plan for the redemption of all things, and we are just kind of hoping that we are on the train that God is on, and that we are participating in God's good work, because God's work will be fulfilled, and we're doing what we can in our time. And just because it doesn't work by human standards doesn't mean that it doesn't move the needle forward for what God is ultimately doing. So I have a question, though. Given the fact that at this point in the podcast, at this point as we're recording, we've mentioned several times that the law has passed. I'm wondering, kind of, where do we go now from here? Have you heard of any preliminary responses, kind of before the bill was passed into law? Have you heard of any responses now from from local schools, food pantries, churches, the Moral Monday protests? What have you heard has been kind of the response so far to the bill being passed?
Yeah, I think most of the response I've heard has been anger, grief, frustration, concern. For me, some of my ongoing work will be when we did that prayer walk through the community. Every place we went to beforehand, I went and talked with every place and just asked, hey, what are your concerns? Are you worried about these budget cuts? Are you worried about these spending freezes? Are you being impacted by this? And so I want to follow up with all those places now, because those became, right. It's not us going to these places and saying what's wrong. It's them telling us, we're concerned about Medicaid and what might happen to our ability to care for our elderly population. And so this kind of follow-up, I think, is essential in this moment. As far as repairs of the breach and Moral Monday, the move is now to do a southern focus on southern states as state capitals, and to say this bill may have passed, but we're not finished. And we're not just going to sit here and woe and wail and not do anything. There's an opportunity to continue organizing. There's an opportunity to continue paying attention to our local communities. So that was my invitation to my congregation on Sunday, which was we need to start identifying what are going to be the issues this budget causes in our local community, and how do we help organize to fill the gaps? People aren't going to self-identify, right? But we're going to have to help organize and figure that out. So that's some of like the what's next. How are we thinking about it? What do we need to do? Which is a big task, but I think the task for such a time as this.
I love that. I love that. Well, as good Wesleyans, we are reminded that John Wesley's heart was strangely warmed. And we like to highlight some of our more strangely heartwarming moments in our ministry. And so, John, tell me, while you were there, was your heart strangely warmed?
Oh, gosh, it was. And very unexpected, maybe the least expected moment, which I find so cool. So Joel was telling the story that, and people spoke, Reverend Barber spoke, and people that are going to be affected by it spoke passionately. And then we did what we also came to do. We took, I don't remember how many of the coffins, Joel, but a dozen or so, out onto, the first plan was to go out onto the plaza, but the Capitol Police had stunning speed. And they moved like the night. No, we just walked over there, and then suddenly the plaza was closed. It was amazing how that happened. We must have gotten there just as it closed in the middle of the day. And so they said no. And so Barber said, put them down right here. And we did. We lined them up there in the street, and we prayed. We were warned. We were warned again, more forcefully, loudly. It was not a joke. That tone change, that was interesting to me, was we went out there onto the street, and then when he got on the bullhorn, that was the first time, like, up my spine. I went, oh, this guy's threatening me. And he was. It was not my imagination, right, Joel? And you warned again, and then, of course, if you do not stop what you're doing, praying here in the street that, DC stops killing people, that you're going to be under arrest. And so they took up the coffins, they piled them up. They actually piled them rather perfectly for a photo op, for being completely honest. And it kind of, Joel, I think there's so many moments where I saw biblically at times where the law and order does something and it so obviously helps the side they were not trying to help. I think power has a natural resistance that is usually toxic.
I'd also say I never assumed that the Capitol Police are against.
No.
I automatically.
No, and that's what I'm getting to. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
They have a tough job, and a lot of them will be impacted by this and care.
Yes. And that's the strangely heartwarming. If this hasn't sounded strangely heartwarming, you have to stick around. It's like John Wesley. It only happened once, man. There's context. So people start getting arrested, and then I was down on one knee, and I felt an arm. And he lifted me up, and I looked at him, and it was a 19-year-old kid. And I looked at him, and we started walking, and his hands were trembling. And you could see him just trying to keep it together. And all of the fear, all the anxiety, all of the things I thought I knew, all just crashed down around me. And I looked at him and I said, "You're all right, man. You're good. Like, we're going to be all right. You're going to be all right." And he took a deep breath and he's like, "Thanks." And I just was blown away. I'm walking like I can't even feel my feet anymore. I'm getting arrested. And the only thing I can think about is the sermon I'm going to preach. Right about this moment where I'm just going, hold on. But gosh, my heart was strangely warmed by seeing the just raw humanity in, Joel, if you will, the other side, or if you, what so many have unfortunately deemed the enemy in police or that. Not at all. This guy was scared because it was scary. Anyways. That was my strangely heartwarming moment while I was away.
I love that you guys brought that up too, because I think it is a good reminder that sometimes, we look at folks in uniform and we kind of mush them all together, and we kind of look at them as the sum total of the commands that they were given to enact, to live out, and forget that a lot of times these folks don't have agency. A lot of times they are doing what they have been told to do, and a lot of them, got into the positions that they're in because they were passionate about justice and about the law, very much in the same similar way to the ways that we are passionate about justice. I just think that people's justice kind of looks different based on the lens that you're looking at them through, and we try our best to look at justice through the lens of Christ, and uplift the poor and the downtrodden first. But we don't receive a paycheck like they do. We don't have to answer to those laws the way that they do. And so I really appreciate you guys naming that, and reminding us that the folks behind the uniforms are human beings as well.
They didn't do anything wrong.
Exactly.
They did not. None of them. I don't know, Joel. None of them did anything. None of them acted inappropriately. I thought none of them acted in extreme harshness. They did their jobs.
Yeah.
And I think we've also been through a lot, right? January 6th was no joke.
They've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And they're under a microscope.
Yeah.
July 4th's around the corner. They're obviously training young men and women to do it. It's a lot. But we were processed right there on the street. For those of you, to round out the story, before we get to our epic fail, because who doesn't love failing? Me, because I learned so much. Makes me want to fail again. That we were processed there on the street, and given our citations, and then our stay was extended because they decided to say that we couldn't pay any of our fines until 24 hours after the arrest, but we had to pay it in person and within 15 days. So we're all just staring at each other going, well, that was well thought out by them. So we're just like, man, but we did, and a group of us stayed behind, and but we went the next day, and we almost didn't get to pay the next day. I think it's, despite the fact that none of them were doing anything wrong, we all got to see, Joel knew this, but some of us else got to see, just by being the machine that it is, it's not interested in helping. It's not interested in helping you after maybe you've broken one of their rules or laws or things like that. Joel, you want to just really quick speak to that before we go into our epic fail and our closing, just kind of the machine and what it is? Yeah.
First, for the record, I did tell everybody, you might have to be here another day.
To be fair, Joel did say something like it. Maybe a lot of us couldn't hear it at the time. We were.
Yeah.
He did.
And I think that's always my ongoing reflection. Like this time was different. The arrest process was different than last time. Last time I was cuffed, searched. All that was a very different experience than this time, where we weren't cuffed or searched or taken to jail or put in the back of a paddy wagon. Or so it's given me a different insight into what people have to go through as they navigate the legal system. I came back, I learned about all my church members who'd been arrested. They all told me their stories, right? Everyone at the soup kitchen was like, oh yeah, I've been arrested too.
That's right. You're like, oh, this is the wrong crowd to be having this.
So you learn a lot about, and then it made me think, oh, I wonder what the experience was like for them, or how easy it is to navigate this system on the other side of things. Anyone can get arrested. That's what I tell people. You want to get arrested, it's easy. Don't be impressed by me. Anyone can do it. But navigating that other side gives you a lot more pause and wonderment for just everyone, particularly the people we're talking about that will be affected by this budget, who will now have less income, struggle more, people who might already be engaged in trying to figure out, how do I pay this, and what do I do, and here's a deadline, and here's I can't pay it. It's painful and eye-opening.
And Jesse, we've tooted our own horns a little bit here and talked about how faith should interact with the world. But
well, I think I'm personally grateful that we are that we're on this side of things where we've had an opportunity to learn from a lot of church history, but a lot of that church history has not always been good. Let's not pretend that the church has always gotten it right on this issue. Despite our Methodist history of ordaining women before most, we've been on the wrong side of too many of these stories. Too many stories of slavery, segregation, LGBTQ plus rights, women's equality took until the 1950s. We have, as a church in general, personally. So, John, in our last podcast, you mentioned that I was on vacation, and while I was on vacation, as a good nerd does, I was listening to an audiobook about Christian history, and preparing to meet with the Board of Ordained Ministry, right? And I'm listening to this book, and I'm listening to the history of the church and how it's just not pretty.
Not always,
it's just
is it?
not pretty. A lot of the things that the church was against, the church ended up being for. A lot of the ways that the church was there for the poor, they ended up being the villains of the poor in a lot of those stories. And, we try as we might to follow God's law and try as we might to follow the call of Christ. We get it wrong too. We get it wrong a lot of the times. But repentance doesn't mean telling the truth, then changing the rest of the story. The same church that once defended segregation now walks with those who demand justice. And I, for one, am grateful that we are on this side of things, that we have learned so much from our painful history, and that we're using what we've learned to be on the right side of history now. The question is, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to move? Are we willing to do the difficult work that it takes to see God's plan of redemption be worked out in our communities? One of the most beautiful things that I feel like I've heard today was, Joel, earlier when you mentioned that this was in response to things that were happening locally, right? Yeah. I think we spend a lot of time paying attention to national news. We spend a lot of time paying attention to politics, and we get upset, and we have our villains and we have our heroes in that story. But I think the beautiful thing was that you were responding, as we as clergy, as we as Christians are called to do, responding to those in our local community. And I believe that a lot of the work that God is calling us to is as far away as our neighbor. John Wesley wrote that there is no holiness but social holiness. So what does that mean for us now going forward? Joel, what does that mean for us?
I think it's what it's always meant the same thing, right? Meaning, like, we care about our world, our community, our people. Kind of the sayings one of my friends has is support your local revolution.
Yeah.
Right? And there's revolutions happening everywhere, but support your local one, because that's the one you're in, and that's the one you should care about. And sometimes it goes as high as the federal government, right? But other times it just stays right at home. So for me, that's the main thing.
So we're a community, right? Ordained, or even clergy. Joel, put out the call, man.
Inviting people?
Yeah.
Well,
somebody told you something on the bus trip. You had a laity speak to you and say something profound to you. And maybe not a demand. It's just a call.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lay person on the bus who said, was telling me about their pastor. They love their pastor, and their pastor cares about justice, and they couldn't be on the trip, but they said, "I want my pastor on this trip." And so there's this like summons from our lay people saying, like, we want our clergy involved in acts of justice and caring about these things, and encouraging them to put their bodies in spaces and places to support movements like this, which I think is important because I know there's a lot of tension in communities of like, what should the role of the pastor be? Are my lay people okay with this? And maybe sometimes we default too much to the people who we think are against it, and we don't hear the voices of the people who are saying, I need this from you. This matters to me because it matters to my life. So I thought that was particularly powerful. So if you're a layperson, encourage your pastor. They need the encouragement too, to be like, oh, this is okay. Yeah. This is okay for me to do. People want me to do this. My community supports this work. That's important.
Yeah, because just like that 19-year-old cop as a kid is a human being who's got his own. So we are too. We have fears. We have anxieties about doing certain things and about taking certain actions, about standing out on a limb by ourselves sometimes. What we're jeopardizing our future, or we think we are. So yeah, perfectly said, Joel. Just talk to your pastor about it. Say that you've got their back. Right? So I'm going to, last thing, Joel, I want you to dream. Because after General Conference last year, the bishop said we need to look at leadership in the church differently, clergy leadership in particular, from moving away from a 1 Timothy understanding to more of a Pentecost understanding, where your young men will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, or the opposite of that. Young men and women will prophesy. That's right. And your old men will dream dreams. So, Joel, I'm going to lump us into the younger group, though. But anyways, look to the future. Dream big. You're long past this. You're no longer in the mix. Maybe. What's your dreams? What's your prophetic dream for the future of the church, if you will? Maybe even not even a United Methodist Church. Where do you see us?
Wait, who's supposed to be dreaming? Old people.
You're dreaming. Go ahead. I know. Oh man, he caught me there. Listen, turn your prophecy into a dream, man.
I think I'm in the group that is just trying to follow where the Spirit's leading. I don't know exactly what it looks like or what the dream or vision is, other than for a more just society where we love our neighbors as we love ourselves, a community where we know how the laws impact our community and we care about that and we want to make sure people are cared for. So how do we get there? I think we kind of build that bridge as we go, and we trust the Spirit in the mix. I didn't think I'd be involved in any of this. It just kind of happened.
Me either.
I say that. I know that's tongue in cheek, right? There was a lot of steps and intentional things that happened that led to it, but it wasn't part of the dream. It was just part of following the Spirit's call.
I was going to say, I think you said it beautifully. You went to a church and then you took one step and then another and another. And I mean, even by the 10th step, you didn't think you'd end up in DC. It's that, I think you said it great. Take that first step. Go listen, go talk, go see if it hits you.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
We give God thanks that the Spirit of God is at work and that we don't have to make it up as we go along. It might feel that way a lot of the time, but we know that the Spirit of God is at work and that we are just trying to be faithful followers of Christ. And I give God thanks that you, Joel, are listening to that voice, are trying to follow that Spirit, recognizing, like you said earlier, that you're not perfect at it. But thank God for Jesus, we don't have to be perfect at it. So thank you all of our listeners for listening to the Means of Grace podcast. If today's episode stirred something in you, as I'm sure it did, we're glad, we're happy. We've been looking forward to having this conversation. That means that you're paying attention. As Methodists, we don't believe in a passive faith. We believe in a faith that walks, a faith that speaks, and sometimes stands in the way of injustice.
So remember, civil disobedience, when rooted in love and justice, isn't a threat to faith. It's one of its highest expressions. Maybe one that we should become more comfortable with again. Be bold, be kind, and when necessary, be disruptive and cause what Lewis said, good trouble every now and again.
All right, so we'll be back soon with more stories, more hope, more faith, more transformation. Until then, may you find the courage to obey God even when the world tells you not to, especially when the world tells you not to. Go in peace to love and serve the world.
Amen.